by 2030, we will have defined with AI every molecular pathway, enzymatic process, and there's millions of them, millions and billions of them in each individual cell. We'll understand each and every molecular pathway in every cell of every tissue, of every organ in the entire human body. Think about that. So you're basically able to model the human body.
Welcome to the Precision Medicine Made Simple podcast, where we simplify the complex world of precision medicine. We're here to explore how personalized healthcare can empower you to understand and improve your health to live a longer and healthier life. Join us as we break down the latest in medical science into actionable insights. Let's make precision medicine accessible and actionable for everyone. This episode is sponsored by Biography Health, where DNA-powered healthcare is designed just for you. Biography Health is a HIPAA-compliant precision medicine platform that equips providers with AI-driven recommendations powered by your genetics, health history, and clinical insights, all while keeping data private, secure, and independent from large EHR systems. If you're a provider ready to bring precision medicine into your practice, visit biographyhealth.com to learn more. Or if you're a patient who wants your doctor to explore this, point them our way. We'll help them bring personalized healthcare to life. As a reminder, this episode is for educational purposes only. This episode is in no way a replacement for professional health advice. Please consult with your professional primary care provider for medical advice. If at any point you feel that a topic discussed on our podcast was misrepresented, or if you have additional insights that could enhance our discussions, we wholeheartedly encourage you to reach out to us. Your feedback is invaluable in helping us improve and in ensuring our content remains both informative and reflective of the latest developments in precision medicine. In this episode, Dr. Stanford, Lucy Janoyan, and Taylor Koo reflect on key takeaways from the Precision Medicine World Conference, from AI's role in understanding disease to the future of polygenic risk scores. They discuss the challenges of data validity, patient privacy, and the evolving role of patients and providers in a tech-driven healthcare landscape, including a highlight from NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang on how AI is set to reshape the future of medicine.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Precision Medicine Made Simple podcast. We are back for season 2, and we are joined by my co-host, Dr. Stanford, and then we also have our Chief Operating Officer, Lucy Janoyan, joining us. Joining us. Similar kind of wordplay there. But for today's episode, we actually recently just came back from the Precision Medicine World Conference. And so we listened to a number of different speakers, talked to a number of different vendors. And so this conversation is just going to be our reaction, our thoughts, especially as the space is moving very, very fast in comparison to even the previous PMWCs. Because with Dr. Stanford, you were at this conference for, what, 5 years?
This was my 7th one.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Veteran.
So my first was in 2019. I was able to get verification from another person that was at, wasn't sure if it was 2019 or 2020, but I talked to someone that was at the 2019, and we realized we had dinner at that one, and we remembered some specific details. So yeah, it's my 7th one.
Wow. Well, so with this being your 7th one, and just to start off this conversation and talking about just the different themes that you've seen, how has the conversation around precision medicine changed from the first time you went in 2019 to now? Like, what were some of those major themes?
The first time I went in 2019, I was virtually the only practicing physician there. So I did not meet another physician that was in practice, period, full stop. The conversation was around, a lot of lab strategies and sequencing this. And, we have this very interesting test to do that. Fast forward to not last year, but the year before, you started seeing quite a few doctors present, and some people talking about implementing these tools in the course of their clinical practice. And last year even more, and then this year, interestingly, there were a lot of very like-minded people to us at that this conference, at this meeting, that are concerned with implementing personalized precision medicine on a broad scale. So, I mean, we encountered, I don't know, you even encountered a few people that, very concerned with this. And that's just great news. It's just awesome. And of course, we'll talk about Jensen Huang's keynote at one point, but a substantial part of his keynote is what the world is going to look like when physicians are able to use personalized precision medicine in their practice. They may actually return to enjoying the practice of medicine and realizing why they got into this in the first place, instead of fighting through all the frustration they have right now in the current break and fix system.
And Lucy, with this being your first time going, what was your impression then with going to the conference and some of the major takeaways and themes that you saw?
I really enjoyed this conference. First, for me, having gone to really large healthcare, digital health tech conferences like Health, where you have tens of thousands of people, sessions, stages, breakout sessions, where it's almost overwhelming, and to be able to even grasp what subject area you want to hone in on or take a deeper dive. It was really the opposite. I think for PMWC, first off, it's about 2,000 folks, right about 2,000 people that attend this event. Most of them are practicing in their art, whether they're scientists, they're researchers, technology developers, they have laboratories, they have multiple tracks. So this year, there was a lot of conversation around AI-driven transformation in biotech and pharma. We heard about real-world data and patient-centered care, which was very exciting and relevant to biography health, next-generation sequencing. We even talked to some of those folks in identifying the faster diagnostics that are emerging rapidly, and of course, the regulatory and ethical challenges in AI. I heard that multiple times from different panels, different healthcare systems were there. So I was able to learn a lot in a short period of time, and be exposed to, again, smaller set of vendors, smaller groups, but very easy to digest the information versus the larger healthcare conferences. So it was fantastic. And it was also, personally, it was fantastic to also meet some of our colleagues and get to spend time with everyone and have the powwow session. So I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, absolutely. There is one session, just to kick off this sort of rabbit hole here, that I don't know if the term surprised is the right term for it, but it really brought into perspective of what biography health is doing, and then how you approached, Dr. Stanford, how you approached your practice differently. And so it was a panel of people, and it was around AI-driven insights for patient insights. Mm-hmm. And they had 4 different executives that came onto stage from these large healthcare systems. But after listening to it almost, and they were talking about how they were able to track patient outcomes just based off of this and using the data within the hospitals. But in a sense, it almost felt like it was still medicine 2.0 versus medicine 3.0. It was almost like medicine 2.0 on steroids from what it sounded like. I was wondering if you two could elaborate and like help me organize some of these thoughts that I've had here.
Well, brilliant observation. Yeah. So with the tools of today, certainly artificial intelligence is changing the way doctors practice medicine. But that doesn't mean, but you say it very well. It can be just used to enhance the break and fix reactive healthcare system, or you could recognize the opportunity that AI provides when joined with the super convergence of other megatrend type technologies besides AI. That is genetics, that is the advances in basic science, that is the advances in computing speed, storage capability, et cetera, to take these data sets and instead point them toward medicine 2.0, as you say, and instead take the opportunity to let the AI be predictive so you can be proactive, so you can delay onset or prevent altogether many, if not most, chronic diseases, including possibly aging.
I would like to add that you're right, Taylor. I think any form of truly using AI technology to deliver Medicine 3.0 is being done in siloed organizations, mostly in clinical research trial settings. I know there was talk about advancing patient-centered outcomes with AI and real-world data integration. There are trials around cancer and treatment of cancer where they integrate genetic and physiological data, patient-reported outcomes, symptoms, but there isn't a private organization or a platform where both physicians and patients can come together, and I would say with the exception of Biography Health, that at least I saw at this conference where they can really incorporate all of those metrics, and we're talking your entire EMR, right? So your family history, medical history, labs, diagnostics of all, including imaging, multi-omic data sets, and then get real-time insights also reviewed by a physician. So that's not being talked about. And I think partly because there is a fragmentation and communication between academia that's doing all this amazing research out there, government, which is interested, but they don't really know how to tackle this because it's a huge, huge undertaking, and the private sector, where you have companies like ours that are really trying to push forward precision medicine and medicine 3.0. So I think that's an important observation. And that is something that we're working on ourselves.
Yeah. And kind of you actually bring up a really great point, which is literally spot on of what I wanted to talk about next, because within the overarching, I guess, theme of just AI and within healthcare, the validity of the data needs to be accurate. If you have, it goes back to the saying of garbage data in is going to equal garbage data out. So making sure that it's as accurate as possible is, of course, the gold standard of what we are trying to achieve. But something that I was still trying to wrap my head around, though, was with gathering data up front and let's say calculating these monogenic risk scores, polygenic risk scores, just to be able to try and prevent chronic diseases. I've heard that was also more so towards research, and it's not yet clinically graded to be able for clinicians to use then, right? So like how does that transition then happen from research then to being adopted by doctors?
Yes, and I'm going to let Dr. Stanford talk about that, but I do want to throw a term that I recently came across. It's been around, it's nothing new, but I hadn't seen it in too much of the literature that I've been reading. It's clinical genomics. So it's essentially genetic medicine being used, or I should say genome-informed care, but in clinical practice. And there's a term that's on Wikipedia. So instead of pharmacogenomics or pharmacogenetics, there's clinical genetics, which is essentially what we do, through Dr. Stanford's practice and the other practices that we work with. So I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Stanford to address that.
Yeah. So, there's really a couple of different levels of your question, Taylor. So one level is, for example, multi-cancer early detection tests like Gallery. So that is also not a test that has the blessing specifically of the NIH or the National Cancer Institute. And in fact, a friend of our, a colleague of mine, is actually performing the studies for the government to help decide if multi-cancer early detection tests like Gallery are something that they should widely endorse. And once you have that endorsement, it has a lot of cachet with doctors in terms of ordering that test. And once the test gets ordered, then insurance companies start feeling compelled to pay for it. But I'm going to tell a story about Wendy speaking at Precision Medicine World Conference. When I saw her at the one in 2024, in January of 2024, she was speaking and she was very excited to announce, this was in January 24, she was announcing that starting in April 2024, big news, that they were going to have they were starting a 3-year study looking at multi-cancer early detection to decide what the 7-year study was going to be. And I'm telling you, in January of 2025, I saw stuff like from the company Delphi. There's a whole track on multi-cancer early detections. There's all kinds of new technologies developing. Gallery is going to be so 2022 here in a minute. It's going to be surpassed. It's old news. 10 years from now, when they're talking, when they're looking at that particular test, who gives a bleep? By then, we're not going to want it because we're going to want the next thing. So fortunately for us in the US of A, physicians are able to do what they call the practice of medicine. So we are able to examine the evidence out there and decide between us and our patients what is in their best interest. And we can go ahead and do that. Now, of course, should something go awry with that, you're going to be asked in court, what makes you think you can do this? There's no government blessing on it. Insurance doesn't do this. There's no guideline from the American College of Physicians. And so for most of us, we just accept that as the cost of doing business. So to real answer to your question, so polygenic risk scores, there's an abundance of evidence that they're ready for prime time. In fact, Eric Topol, who most of our listeners are well familiar with out of Scripps, a preventive cardiologist, he wrote a very elegant article on this about 8 or 10 months ago. RPRS scores ready for prime time. And his impetus for that article was something published either in Nature or The Lancet, one of these high top tier journals that basically said, yes, they're ready. So keep separate the idea of the machinations of the institutions to put their blessings, because that takes years and years based on randomized controlled trials where they clamp or fix everything except for one thing. And then they look at that over a period of years and they look at a certain outcome. That is so 1995. That's just not going to work anymore. You can't do that anymore because by the time that study's done, the benefit of the thing to your patients has been obviated. So the future belongs to those that can scientifically and medically evaluate the studies that are out there and make decisions jointly with their patients on what might be best for them under what's called the practice of medicine.
That's what's kind of interesting about all of this. And even just having several different conversations with just other folks at the conference, there's sort of this blend or mix of people that are both optimistic in the space, but then also pessimistic in saying we should be farther by now. And at this point, it even seems even farther away considering how much progress we've made. But I would love to hear more thoughts based off of this, because we take a very Bayesian approach, whereas like other people, they're just waiting for these regulations.
So I'll give you the old man perspective on this. Get off my ear. Having been to these things for 7 years, and I think it might have been Bill Gates or someone like that said something very smart that stuck with me. Things happen slowly, then all at once. And I'm telling you, you're highlighting things happening slowly, and you're absolutely correct. But I'm here to say we're incipient to all at once. We are on the brink. Is that brink? And I think that brink is in the span of single-digit years, 1, 2, 3, not decades. So I would tell all doctors out there, buckle up, buttercup, because things are going to be rapidly changing. And you better be agile and adapting and adopting. Our AI and platforms are going to sweep you up like sawdust on the floor.
No, and I agree with that. And I think from an optimism lens, if we're looking at AI and computational biology, they're accelerating drug discovery, right? So if we follow the money, the industries that have really applied precision medicine or all the latest science and technology, pharma is a big one, the oncology space is a big one, spending a lot of money. So precision oncology is very personalized now. They have targeted treatments. And that was a huge theme. They had entire showcase tracks for these areas. And multi-omics integration, I think that's another area that's we're very optimistic about, because it's providing a more complete picture of disease biology, right? We look at systems biology, just kind of the Lee Hood lens. But on the pessimistic side, I would say there's still a lot of regulatory frameworks that we're struggling with to keep up, especially with AI-driven innovation. There are a lot of ethical issues, a lot of questions about equity, right? Equity concerns. Who's going to be able to afford? The cost is still, we're getting there, but it's still not really affordable to everyone. So there is a bit of an algorithmic bias that we're
but
seeing.
Guess what else is an affordable? Health insurance. So
That's
and
true.
the reason it's not
true.
affordable is because insurance carriers, so-called payers, won't pay for it. But a friend of mine, not a friend of mine, wish it was a friend of mine, Peter Diamandis, who's with Fountain Life or Fountain Health or whatever it's called these days. I think he was one of the founders of HLI, Human Longevity. Very smart MD, wrote a book called The Future is Faster Than You Think. He just sent out a newsletter, which I'm pretty sure I've said this on the podcast before, echoing what he says in his newsletter. And that is, insurance companies are done. They are so done. They are so done. I think he was affected by the fires out here. And of course, if you live out here, it's Los Angeles. So if you live in Los Angeles, you know people, including yours truly, where the insurance companies are canceling your fire insurance, blah, 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 and just how they're dealing with people and how insurance companies are negotiating, this change in healthcare delivery paradigm. We're in a break and fix system that is set up around insurance reimbursement. And insurance reimbursement is set up around bad stuff that's already happened. So, for example, they're more than happy to pay for a medication to help someone that is fully diabetic and has their foot rotting off and their kidneys shot and everything else, but not happy at all or at all inclined to pay for that a priori to prevent that kind of situation. I just don't see it as tenable. And the reason I wanted to jump in there on you, Lucy, is that it's totally affordable. It's very affordable. It's a must affordability. It's the only way, not the only way, but it's going to be the best way forward to reduce healthcare costs, which are 20% of a $20 trillion budget, which is $4 trillion, which kind of tells you why this oil tanker isn't changing course as it barrels ahead at 40 miles an hour in the open ocean. And that's because efforts and go to where the money flows. And I'm not evoking, probably sounds like I am, but I don't mean to evoke that anyone is evil or has evil intent, but it's as simple as this. If you're an interventional cardiologist and you're paid to put in stents, then if that was my job, and it almost was, I thought about that briefly, but going into cardiology, probably would have been an interventionalist. I'd be really good at that, and I would make sure I did it really efficiently, and I'd make sure everyone that was working with me was operating at the top of their game, putting in stents, because that is what supports the basic business. Now, I'm sure in the back of my mind, I would be saying, damn, it's kind of like Peter Attia. Why are the people falling in the river instead of picking the people out of the river, keep them from falling in. So in other words, I'm sure I would have wondered how come there wasn't more effort toward preventing heart disease. But the focus of me and my team would be to be doing a very good job with interventional cardiology, because that's my job. And so until there's kind of a fundamental institutional attitudinal level change that was called for, by the way, in the Affordable Care Act of 2015, was precision medicine was specifically designated as should be a major emphasis going forward. That is the right approach, the right medication, the right patient, the right procedure at the right time. Well, the right time is before the fit hits the shan, right? So, and that's a different paradigm. But between, I think that, and I don't think you need the current head of Health and Human Services to disrupt healthcare, which he most certainly seems poised to, for better or worse. But let's hope that one of the things that comes out of that is a dumping out of the jar of marbles and just hitting a big reset. And you go, well, what about that oil tanker? What about the $4 trillion and the stakeholders that like things how they are? I don't know if I honestly, I'm not optimistic for them surviving this disruption. I'm far more optimistic for the industry, so to speak, of personalized precision medicine. I think we're going to see that disruption. I'm very confident.
I agree. And I do agree with you. I think when we look at the economics, it's more than affordable. And in the long term, there are multiple studies showing how precision medicine saves money for the patient, for the system, for the payer, just all the stakeholders. But it is a system issue. When we talk about the affordability aspect, it's more of a high level view, because a lot of things need to be changed and for precision medicine to be applied at every level, right? So we're talking primary care, but once you go beyond the primary care, the preventive look at the patient, then if they do need the treatment, we also want the treatment to be personalized, right? The drug to be personalized. So precision medicine can be applied to multiple specialties.
We want to personalize the patient and creating this digital twin, so to speak. And then we use precision medicine with the military analogy of precision munitions, specific tools to direct toward a specific target. That's revealed in the personalization process for sure. And I think, I just respectfully disagree. I think we're much closer than you think. I think really what I'm hearing from you is something like you still think that the insurance industry is going to eventually be the central thing that decides this. And so I'm just going to go out, and I think that what you're saying is consistent with conventional wisdom, but I'm going to roll the bones, and I'm going to say that that's not the case at all. I see the insurance companies, they're really on the ropes right now, and in every way. And we, meaning those people that attended the Personalized Precision Medicine Conference, don't need insurance companies. We really don't. And we'll see what time tells.
I found that interesting. There were a lot of insurance companies at the conference. A lot. There were quite a few from multiple plans talking about precision medicine, talking about the challenges they're seeing within their systems. But going back to your reference to digital twins, I was really, really encouraged by Jensen Huang's mention of digital twins and his ability to see that vision. And of course, I think his humility on stage of saying, well, he never thought he was going to be at a precision medicine conference, let alone receiving an award at PMWC. And of course, it was by far the most attended session. I mean, he had bodyguards. We couldn't even approach him to say hello. But
That was just Taylor in a suit. That wasn't a bodyguard. Taylor, can you roll that?
or he had
Are you
people
able to play
guarding.
that 2-minute clip of Jensen?
And so anyhow, the scale of biology is so incredible. But finally, if you just look at what's going on, for the first time, we can understand the language of amino acids. We're increasingly understanding the language of the genome. We can understand, of course, AlphaFold, the language of proteins. Now we're on the cusp of understanding how to represent a cell, right? You can understand how to represent a cell, then you could represent billions of cells, and hopefully you could represent, the functionality of an organ and tissues, and before you know it, you can represent the entire human body. Now, how long is that going to take? One way to think about that is from the moment that we were able to represent anything in deep learning to the moment we represented a protein, understood the language of a protein, I guess that would be 2012 to 2018. That was 6 years. And then from a protein to now on the cusp of a cell, right? So 2018 to now 6 years. Surprisingly, I have no idea why, but there's kind of a rhythm in AI that's about every 6 years. And the reason, I think, is because it takes 2 years to get one cycle, and most engineering takes about 3 cycles. And so I would be surprised if certainly before 2030, within this decade, that we're representing basically all cells, human organs, and we have a representation of it, a language of it. We understand the language of it, and we can predict, we can understand, we can predict, we can generate.
Jensen Huang as the CEO of NVIDIA, just the significance of what he said there, and just to cap the main thing, he's saying within this decade, and I trust him, he would know that by 2030, we will have defined with AI every molecular pathway, enzymatic process, and there's millions of them, millions and billions of them in each individual cell. We'll understand each and every molecular pathway in every cell of every tissue, of every organ in the entire human body. Think about that. So you're basically able to model the human body. Now, an engineer will tell you if you can understand how something works, it's much easier to figure out why it's not working. And once you can see exactly why something's not working, you now know what you need to fix, what the target for intervention is. So 2030, that's an eye blink when you're, that's an eye blink in my lifetime. And you can only imagine, and by the way, a normal cellular process that's included in that, aging. Aging is a very defined, well, theoretically will be, but it's specific molecular pathways, chemical reactions and processes that are definable. And once you've defined it, you can play with it. I'm just saying, also cancer is a very complex disease because it involves dozens of different pathways. Well, dozens of different pathways for AI, that's defined billions of them for each cells and nothing thing. So I'm just going to say, out for the purposes of being controversial, or just throwing this out there, if what Jensen Huang says is true, I would say it within 1 or 2 of those engineering cycles. So in 2036, 2042, cures for all cancers. There'll be a nothing thing, to deal with them. Aging, there'll certainly be specific treatments that are able to specifically evidence for real target the aging process. And really all these processes of chronic disease. And so what he said in that 2-minute snippet is something fun to think about.
It's tremendous.
With that being said, though, do you think people should wait until 2030 to
No,
now
you want
start
to
to
make
learn
sure
about
you're
this?
upright. I gave a talk yesterday and someone asked that exact question. No, you want to make sure you're upright and your protoplasm is in as good a condition as possible, right? You got to make it to 2042. You got to make it to 2036. And also the most important thing that's going to come out of that defining normal cellular processes and pathophysiology of cellular processes is you're going to know what kinds of things to do to never come to the attention of the medical profession, right? Because we're going to know these are the things that drive it. Maybe it winds up being, we start to see really what the effect of microplastics are. Maybe there's nothing you can do about it, but just throwing that out there, it's going to become more apparent the things that we really need to focus on. And the vast majority of them are going to be environmental, lifestyle, et cetera. And there will be a certain amount of genetically driven stuff and genetically driven pathology that will need to be corrected. And of course, big pharma is going to do well to, pivot in that direction. I think as Lucy was referring to, the place was crawling with people like that. And those guys are going to do well. I guess power to them. Hopefully there's some kind of reform afoot there.
Well, I thought that there was a panel with actually panelists from NVIDIA and Amgen, and they were talking about this autonomous science, a concept of autonomous science where AI generates the hypothesis and robotic labs conduct the experiments and researchers oversee the process. And through this, they can have a lot of the pace of discovery basically picks up. And this is very specific to biotech and pharma, but just that idea is just amazing. The thought of autonomous science, right? Again, accelerated by AI.
Yeah. And just as a kind of a check on my unbridled enthusiasm here, really, when you add all this together, the truth is that the fact is, I should say, that we have no idea what the future is going to look like. The only thing we know is that it will look nothing like what it does right. The healthcare environment and how healthcare is delivered 10 years from now, I'm just going to say right now, none of the three of us and none of the listeners has any idea what that's really going to look like, other than it's likely to look far different than it does right now. Far different, unimaginably different. And when I say unimaginably different, you can put a positive spin on that by saying it's going to be unimaginably improved.
Well, even if it's unimaginably improved, though, taking a step back and even thinking about the presence of what we can do with the science of today, I mean, this was a trend that I saw with PMWC, and this is I think my fourth time there are several different people that are solving different parts of precision medicine, but then there's only a very select few that are actually consolidating all of this information and using the science of today to have a strong baseline of even getting to that improved future years down the line.
Yeah, so there's a term for that. It's called holistic medicine, looking at the whole of everything. And personalized precision medicine is at the same time most grounded in Western evidence-driven medicine, and at the same time, all of science, and looking at not just take this pill and this thing will adjust this. That's really not where it's at with this. That's not where personalized precision medicine is going to be the most helpful. It's not where AI is going to be the most helpful. It's going to look at globally what to do. And you're alluding to the low-hanging fruit of personalized precision medicine. So, for example, things like cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative disease, and metabolic disease, and autoimmune inflammatory processes all are heavily impacted on how the ability of your body to manage the insulin glucose axis. If you are insulin resistant, it puts you at risk for all those things I just said. And so to think about diabetes as just a disease process that puts you at risk for heart disease, that's really not where this is at. Where this is at is looking at these fundamental processes that act across organ systems, across categories of disease, and really get in. That is really much more of a holistic approach. So I would say, things like continuous glucose monitors, focusing on insulin resistance is in fact holistic medicine. And how do you do that? It's the usual things you think of when you think of holistic medicine. That is, modifying your diet, getting the kind of high exertion type exercise that's needed to modify those cellular processes in your bodies. I would agree with you, Taylor, 1000%. Get those things right now that the world of science and evidence is telling us. And some of the stopgap things we know how to make you less insulin resistant. We know how to keep cholesterol plaques from accumulating in your arteries. Let's just start with that. And so when you get to 2036 or you get to 2042, you don't already have cancer and your pipes aren't clogged, because we've talked about on previous podcasts, it's much easier to deal with a small problem or some deviation from normal than some massive deviation. You don't want to try to address vascular disease after, you're all clogged up and clotted off. You want to deal with it at the stage of fatty streak and early atherosclerosis. And we know how to do those things now. We know how to not be insulin resistant, and those are hopefully the type of holistic population scale things we can start working on right now.
And all of that data needs to live somewhere. And I think some of the themes, again, from the conference around the patient governance, algorithmic transparency, and also data privacy, which we take incredibly seriously, are huge considerations. And at the end of the day, the patients want access to this information and they want to own the information. And I think
they
organizations
want to know it's secure. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the industry as a whole, and I know the biography health effort, you got to lean into those pillars of privacy and security, encryption. And along those lines, what you touched on, Lucy, everybody is going to need a data strategy going forward, especially in all phases of their life, but certainly in healthcare. And I think biography health is going to be one of the great answers for that. Concentrate and aggregate that type of information so it can be analyzed and so it can be put into action to help you be the best you, so to speak. And along those lines, ownership and control. People need to start thinking about having ownership and control of their data, which is part and parcel with the privacy and security part.
Well, and I think that was my consideration. This is why I hadn't done any sort of sequencing with any other organization, whether it's whole exome or microarray, because of those concerns, because I know that even if it's anonymized, some of the data is made public to different entities. So I wanted to go through biography health for myself and for my family members to ensure that privacy and security. And of course, a little bit of a cheat code. I know what I know because I work with the organization. So I do have that inside look. But I think for folks out there who are shopping around, and there are a lot of organizations, the presentations are exciting, and even the timelines are getting better and better, right? That was another aspect of PMWC, where we see the technology coming out where they can sequence a whole genome literally within days and a couple of weeks. So that means there's more of a volume. That means more people are actually getting their whole genome sequenced. It's exciting, but making sure that we also know where that information lives and will continue to live is important.
I have a sort of off now. So going back to the whole genome sequencing question, and I don't know if this is going to be right for this podcast or if I still want to keep this in, but there was a comment on, let's say, using the Chinese whole genome sequencing technology, which is cheaper than what has traditionally been out there. I guess, even though it is cheaper, one of my concerns was just the idea with data and privacy being accessed through just other areas and scenarios, let's say like China. I guess, yeah, this is a loaded question. Like, one, why is it so cheap? And then also, how can I trust that like a company that is doing this to protect my data as well?
Yeah, can I take that one? So, they're talking about using the Chinese sequencers. You're talking about actually getting toward that $100 whole genome sequencing. But, so what's the problem with that? Many of us, and I'm going to just throw the big caveat out there that in this regard, and I'm sure some listeners will clue in on this, I know very little of what I'm about to talk about. And so I'm talking more on an emotional level kind of thing. But I certainly think that even if there was a chance that the PRC, the People's Republic of China, would have access to genomic information on Americans, we don't want that. Because, quite frankly, if you've ever been to China, and China is awesome, it's really awesome, but from the time you sat down there that you're in a different society. You're in a society that values the collective over the individual. We live in a society that values the individual over the collective. That's why we have driving home last night, guys are chucking their garbage out the window. If you did that in China, you'd get taken behind the police station, and that'd probably be about it for it to put up. Yeah, I'm exaggerating to make a point, but, but I think with our values and whatnot, and just in the way the power structure is setting up in the world, we don't want that. We don't want them having access and being able to leverage their technology off of our genomes. We just don't want that. Even if it's going to save $300, I'm not going to do it. I think what you're referring to is using Illumina type platform. And again, sorry to all the people that know about this, because I'm saying I don't know what I'm talking about, but that Illumina doesn't have that problem. And I'm supposing that the Chinese sequencers do. With this type of information and ultimately the value of it, we don't want that. We don't want that going over there.
Yeah. I guess also the other question too.
I sound like get off my yard guy again, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess it also brought up the question then in my head is like, does the quality also change within it too? Like, are you buying Temu whole genome sequencing versus the actual?
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's excellent. For me,
I have no clue.
So I went to China for a few weeks right before COVID. Actually, I was there in the fall of 2019. Don't ask me how, but I mean, I got tours at the highest levels of their industry and government. My son-in-law somehow knows them all. It's from Brazil, and Brazil and China do a lot of business together. And I can tell you that they're very proud of the fact that they're, and for them, the idea that they would copy our technology they're proud of that. I mean, they're going, yeah, no, you guys did this. It was awesome. We copied it, and then we just made it better. And it's like, okay, so what's wrong with that? I mean, so nothing, right? So I don't have any question necessarily about the quality of the data they might produce and all that. It's the problem I have with it is, again, just how that sets up for the world order of China as a superpower. We're a superpower. We're philosophically opposed, and it's what's going to frame, the world for the next, 30, 50, 100 years. And I don't know. I feel like I like, kind of what we're doing. And I don't feel like giving them any advantage, and it's really that much of an emotional thing. And I just know that whatever it is, I'm sure they're doing a great job. I have a lot of respect for their scientists and how they go about things. But, I don't think we want them just driving off with our data to make them, an even more economic powerhouse than they already are.
Then you're going to see Chinese digital twins of us over.
Careful there. Be very, very careful there.
Wow, that looks a lot like me. What's going on here?
Sometimes these podcasts get kind of fun. I don't know.
It should be. I hope so. Gosh.
Taylor, just makes it fun.
I try. I really try. Because, I've heard so many other podcasts that just go in like question and answer. But I like to be so engaging and crack in some jokes here and there.
Very authentic, I would say.
Thank you.
And thank God I'm not afraid to talk about stuff I don't know anything about.
Like, I think people need to be more like,
we will go and find out and report back. No problem.
Yeah. Well, you say at the top of the show, if there's something we say that's not accurate, please let us know. So I'm sure there's plenty. Do we ever get much of that kind of feedback? I never hear anything. I wish we would get more, because I'm sure that we would certainly learn some things.
Yeah, I wish we get more too. But maybe as we are starting to branch off and post this out, and listeners are sharing this with their friends, we get to get more feedback on this. I guess.
Sorry to cut you off, Taylor, but I would suggest to the listeners to send us any questions they have. And if we haven't answered it on the podcast, we'll go find the experts and bring them onto the podcast and get those questions answered. So it's a process where I know I'm learning every day. And just when I think I know something, then I realize how much I don't know. The industry is moving so fast. It's incredible. We have to be on top of it almost daily. And I'm always amazed at how much you know, Dr. Stanford, because I know when I'm discovering something and I'm asking you, you're like, yep, I know about them. Yes, I've heard about them. Or yes, I've used them. Yes. So it's nice to get a shortcut like that, because there's a lot of information to sift through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no.
As we start,
it's been an amazing 8 years now since I started kind of focusing in this area of genetics, precision medicine, and how it might be applied broadly at a population scale in a thoughtful way, blah, blah, blah. And we're definitely, as you pointed out, Taylor, it was like nothing a year ago, a little bit. And now it's just the whole conference was how this might be implemented broadly, a variety of platforms. Certainly nothing exactly like Biography Health, but some other interesting ideas out there about how to go about this. And it's going to be a really interesting process going forward, how we, who can come up with the great, most efficient, low cost ways to do this. And I think I can feel it. We're incipient to just an incredible amount of adoption of this coming in the next 24 to 48 months.
Yeah, and I think all the research that's being done by ARPA, and the National Science Foundation, it's incredibly encouraging. They had a presence at the conference as well, and they're doing some amazing work, which just helps us and what we're trying to do with democratizing precision medicine. So the future is very bright for the space.
Yeah, it will be very Tesla-esque, I think. And what was the democratized Tesla? Happy to say I've never had a Tesla, never had an electric car. I'd like one. But was it the 3 they came out with? That was the everyman's version of the Tesla, and the Y was like the rich guys drove or whatever.
There's a 3, and then the S was the rich guy one, and then the Y was like a more accessible SUV. And then
so I think we're only about, really, again, the over-under is 36 months away from, I think we're going to see widespread adoption and go, well, Bill, Dr. Stanford, that's just like right around the corner. But, if you look at just the difference in, 2024 to 2025 and 23 to 24, I don't think it's a very outlandish thing to say that people will be routinely doing whole genome sequencing. It's going to be in the hundreds of dollars to have that, like $300, $400, $500 to have your whole genome and some basic analysis on it. And, and AI is going to make it cheap and keep it cheap to do the analysis. And this is, AI, like it's overcoming every other industry, is really this is not a newsflash, but is taking the field of medicine by storm, and it's going to propel personalized precision medicine forward because, again, data analytics and the ability to make sense out of large data sets has always been the focus of personalized precision medicine. And now you have something that can do it in seconds, whereas 4 or 5 years ago when I was doing this, it was happening on a scale of hours. I mean, not just how about like 12, 14, 15 hours it would take me to pour through the analysis that it now is automated on the Biography Health platform to happen in seconds. It's amazing. And obviously that drives the cost out of it, which democratizes it. But oh, by the way, even the stuff that used to be expensive in terms of the wet lab type stuff, cost is coming down there. It's going to democratize itself. It's not going to require insurance reimbursement or anything of the like. People won't tolerate not being sequenced. They'll just go do it themselves if they have to, or they'll change insurance companies to someone that pays for it, whatever. I wouldn't lose any sleep over insurance companies and their participation in our industry. That's my outlandish statement for the day.
Yeah. Well,
we're not
so
losing sleep. I think other entities may be, but we're not.
And I would direct the listeners to, if you Google Peter Diamandis, and again, I've already plugged that guy once, but I'll do it again. Just do Peter Diamandis and say his take on fire insurance, health insurance, and life insurance. And you'll see I'm not the only person that thinks the insurance industry is ripe for disruption, and not a minute too soon.
Anyways, Dr. Stanford, Lucy, thank you so much for hopping onto the show, sharing the insights, and PMWC, great conference. Can't wait to be back next year. Shout out to Tomer and the team.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks, Taylor. Good job.
Thanks for joining us on the Precision Medicine Made Simple podcast. If this episode inspired you to learn more about your health, please leave us a review and share the podcast with a friend. Your feedback helps spread the word about the power of precision medicine. Remember, taking action today can lead to a healthier tomorrow. See you next time.